Hello everyone, welcome to AMA number 5. As you may have seen, our new website is now live, so today we'll be using that as a starting point. We'll take a look at what this new update clarifies about the proof of execution platform, how this shows up in real use cases like music and AI, and how all of that connects back to UBT and long-term supporters. As always, this is about structure and clarity, not hype or price. My role is just to guide the conversation and keep us on track. So let's start with the music-related work, which a lot of people in this community care about. The new site mentions live products in production. When can users expect the app for the music industry built around the proof of execution concept to be available for broader use?
Yeah, great question. The music and media use case will be one of the first real-world environments where we are applying our proof of execution concept in practice. That's for sure. But the focus is not to come up with a consumer-facing crypto app, just to be clear on this. It will be a enterprise infrastructure, which we will set up together with our industry partners, centered around the question how to make provenance workflows transparent. How can we have rights attribution in the media environment set up? And I guess this will be a bridge to other use cases, like, for example, the question in AI, where you also have the provenance question coming up.
Yeah, I can directly chime in on that. I mean, on the last AMA, we had Marten there from Tunesat, Germany, and Tunesat as a customer is using this new platform and basically software solution that we create here as a B2B solution, but not only within Tunesat, of course, but it is the central platform that Tunesat will be using, and pretty soon actually, it's not so far away, will be using to manage all the rights clearances and provenance, proof of what has happened with the music, when and where, for all its clients. So it's a B2B application that is not simply used within Tunesat, but it's something that will be customer facing to the B2B clients of Tunesat, which basically are many music publishers and music labels. Without calling out any names, because that's, of course, as always in the B2B sector, it's not allowed.
And to make it clear and giving the broader picture, of course, it's not only Tunesat that can use this template where we support this use case. Other companies that are in the same space, of course, can use it as well. In general, we are building an infrastructure that is very broad. And so the Tunesat case is one of the verticals. And every time we have vertical, then we have a template, and this template defines which pieces of data are being used for this template, like which rights or which media has been affected by this use case. We have this template that defines all the pieces we need. It defines a special UI oftentimes, and it defines which parts are written to a smart contract. But this design allows us to add more verticals very easily, so supporting more use cases on the infrastructure we have in place.
And looking at it from a sales side again, the business side, once Tunesat establishes this platform to all its clients, there's of course a very easy direct link to this client from our side saying, hey, you're already using this in the context of Tunesat, your data is already ingested, and then we will of course look at getting these systems directly to these music publishers and music labels, because they already know the tech, they already have this level of trust that is so super important when you're talking about original rights and copyrights. And that is of course some sort of I wouldn't even call it Trojan horse, but it's a bit like that. It's like they're already using it without knowing it. And then we can directly, present the expanded opportunities and possibilities of this platform to them.
So how does the move from pilot to production with Tunesat and Audiogroup translate into UBT usage? Will every validated detection trigger a transaction that in some way involves UBT?
Yes, in general, the core principle is that every proof generation and validation is tied to protocol activity, which means UBT usage. But the other side of this thing is we are not maximizing UBT usage per se. The idea is to come up with a overall system that is competitive. And so, of course, there are use cases where proofs will be aggregated. So not every single proof might use UBT, but in general, the question is yes, it will. And as I said, it's about not speculative token mechanics, but building a system that can scale and support a lot of use cases.
And perhaps I may add that there are two sides of UBT usage in the system as we imagine it or as we build it. So the actual writing and reading of proofs and verifying of proofs is something where UBT is involved, because you actually have to, like on a credit-based system, you have to pay for writing a proof or for aggregating them or for checking them. But there's also incentive side of things in the validator network. So if there's a proof in the system and we need, let's say, a real world check for a proof that has been made, not on every proof, of course, if you write thousands of them a day, perhaps in a write scenario, but on every randomly picked, let's say 10th or 15th one, you need a human proof of execution. Then there is also UBT involved when it comes to incentivizing the one who's writing into the blockchain that he's writing the right and the correct thing in the blockchain. Otherwise, he will be slashed, which is also built upon UBT. And the third-party validator should also get rewarded if he has the actual manual work of validating something. Then this part is also incentivized by UBT. So it's not only a payment model, but also a payout model in terms of the validation structure.
Yeah, and if you want to paint the complete picture in terms of UBT, I don't know if you mentioned it already, but we are building a inclusive ecosystem. So there's also the possibility for people or companies from the outside to build templates that support different use cases, or even come up with their own proof smart contracts that have to use UBT as well, but they could have different parameters or live on a different chain. So it's inclusive, and people enlarging the ecosystem and building additional things to our platform will get a rev share. So there will be some portion of the fee that will go to these people that build additional parts that empower our ecosystem. But this will all become much clearer when we launch our paper, which we will not call any longer white paper, or try to not call it white paper anymore, but we want to call it the infrastructure paper, because white paper is something we have to tie to the MiCA regulation here in the European Union. And we will have a second white paper. That's the legal white paper we need for approaching exchanges in Europe and regulators. So to make it legally clear, there will be two papers: our infrastructure paper and the legally required paper, which we'll call the white paper.
So if the German rollout proves successful, is the next step to expand this UBT-driven model to Tunesat USA, especially with the No Fakes Act coming in? Or is the focus first on expanding in Europe?
So the next step after Germany will be the European territories, also because they're all very different, because there's different regulations, different law, different setups, which will be very helpful for this whole platform ecosystem, because we'll have to build various templates. You know, it's not super different, but it's always, we have to adjust to some specific things. And once we have that, the US should be next, but we are European focused for the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think Europe currently provides a very strong environment because of the regulatory pressure around provenance, AI accountability, compliance, and is already increasing rapidly in terms of pressure. So that's a great environment for us. And of course, the AI space is so much in the focus at the moment. I guess there's a lot of things going on.
So now let's look at the proof of execution platform itself and how it's being presented. How does the proof of execution platform actually verify that an AI process or workflow was executed correctly, rather than just proving that a file existed at a certain time.
So from the Tunesat side, I mean, mainly it is about proving that something existed at a certain time, because that's exactly the point where we want to make sure or prove that music has been used on a platform, publicly available at a certain time. So it's being written on the blockchain, but not just as a hash. You can imagine that there's a whole set of documents that we have to prepare to have a usage made, to prove that the usage has happened. So let's say there's a video on the internet, there's music in there, there's proof being taken from that website, and this is then being stored somewhere, and this whole thing is being put in a wrapped form on the blockchain so that later on, the potential infringer who used the music without a license may later on simply delete the whole thing on the internet and say, hey, but it was never online. And now there's several ways, of course, to go back with time machines or whatever, but that's very cumbersome. For us, the nice thing then is that we know we have this blockchain entry where we have the direct point to the wrapped up content that has also not been touched, because that is something that can be secured as well. And then later on, if the client says, or not the client, the infringer says, hey, but this is not true, this hasn't happened, we can say, well, yes, but on this day, you can look it up here on the blockchain, there has been this wrapped up information that this video that you produced has been on the internet using music that you have not licensed. That's a very clear and simple path. I think that on the AI side and other sides, it all depends a bit on the exact use case, but on the music side at least, I can give you that example.
And we can make it a little bit more general, perhaps, from the way that we look at it. Of course, it depends on the use case template, how it's presented to the users of the system. But in general, we have digital assets that have some kind of an ID that can be used in that wrapped up format that will finally end up in the blockchain as a proof. But we also have other actions. For example, the case that Pierre just mentioned, a real world screen recording that we tie together with an official timestamp provider. So it's not that we just mention it, but there's external providers, according to EU regulation, for example, that are providing special timestamp services that you can connect to an asset that you saved or recorded in an online storage. So everybody who wants to prove that this actually happened has to have access to the very same screen recording, for example, and to the same timestamp provider, and then he can recreate the very proof that ended up on blockchain. And if you go further into the AI world, in the AI agent world, the thing that we mentioned there was mainly agents producing code or deploying new versions of a software system. And then, of course, the complete system would be connected to something like GitHub or something that provides another protocol for storing code and different versions of code. And we can connect to these versions and also anchor them on blockchain. So we know as soon as some automated system writes new code, we can tie that to a proof on the blockchain. And the final step will always be that there are human validators involved, that perhaps on, as I said before, on every 5th or every 10th or every 20th proof, then there will be a manual validation. And also the reputation of that very person or group or institution who verifies that the data on blockchain is the correct one will also ramp up or scale the reputation of the process itself. So some things are just digital assets, that they are very easy. Some things are hybrid, so you have to record something from a digital screen, and some are still human and manual, and all these together form a proof of execution.
Yeah, so I guess the general picture is important. The idea is not to write something on a blockchain to have it written on the blockchain. That's most of the time that will be not sufficient. Our idea is to come up with workflows for the different use cases that are auditable, machine readable, and if possible, court proof. So because we are living in an enterprise world, we want to come up with workflows that are court proof. And that means we have to look at every use case and every template and define which pieces of data we need, which validators or offline real-world validators we use, which cryptographic signatures might be used, or if we need some features like Stefan just mentioned, this idea of selective disclosure. There are so many things that are dependent on the use case, and it's much more than just writing something on a chain to come up with an auditable, code-proof workflow.
The website positions proof of execution around regulation and enterprise use. How do you see proof of execution connecting to frameworks like the EU AI Act in practice?
Yeah, I guess we mentioned this in one of the questions before. As we see here in Europe, the regulation is pushing organizations toward accountability, provenance, explainability, and this is not only true for the AI space, but AI is in the spotlight at the moment, strongly, not only because of the capital expenditure we see in the space, but also in terms of the regulation that is coming on. And on the website, which is live by now as we talk, we mentioned a few of these use cases. Of course, it's all about AI models learning and doing inference later. So the question of provenance, where is all this stuff coming from that models learn from? You have to be accountable if you come up with such a model. You have to prove which data you use to train a model. And then there's this whole space of AI agents working with one another. So how can you as someone who is sending out an AI agent, how can you prove this agent did things or didn't things? So you need to have an activity logging somehow, or agents working together. How can they prove one thing to another? You have the whole space of federated learning, where you have multiple instances working on a AI model in a federated way. How can they prove what they did, and how can they prove which data they used? So AI is a huge thing, and we have at least 3 use cases defined on the website, which we will support shortly, which need a lot of help from the infrastructure side to make AI, let's say, accountable for companies.
I'd also say for the 3 parts, I mean, it's a difference if you have an AI that does something, like an AI agent writing code, then you would perhaps try to prove or verify the exact same code steps that a human developer would have taken. But it's a lot, it's many more of them in shorter time. And of course, it's most probably a larger amount of code that is not verified by a human for like each and every code line. Perhaps it is, perhaps it isn't. So you need a scenario there where you can really see the different steps of a coding evolvement. And the other part where it's about AI output of something like music or picture or text or code, where it's more about what was the learning like and what input was used to empower that model to produce a certain output. That's a different story. So both stories are supported by our templates. And the federated learning part just sums them up because it's creating new content in an AI system based on models, based on coding agents. So I think there will be a lot of points in the near future, where we have to really clearly distinguish what we mean by AI, because as a concept, it just became too big. So it's AI agents, AI coding, and federated learning.
I guess something crossed my mind just from a more broader perspective. If you look at AI, and then there's the question of the perception in general, where do we stand with our product? Is the time already there for us to come out with a proof of execution platform that is used for all of these use cases? I mean, we had this question 8 years ago when we came up with our first product, and we learned that we had to educate companies about blockchain in general. We were a little bit too early, and the adoption came 1 or 2 years later. And with AI, I guess we see this huge hype at the moment. We all saw this capital expenditures on NVIDIA GPUs, and then on semiconductors, and on cooling infrastructure for all these data centers. And I guess when we end up having all these huge data centers and all these huge AI systems, sooner or later the realization will be that we need some infrastructure solution to comply to all these regulations we have. So how do all these AI systems come up with a solution in terms of provenance and accountability? And in that very moment, we want to be ready with our platform and offer a solution. And our solution will be one of a few, I guess. And having a blockchain-based solution seems a very logical way to us. But of course, we are looking for the point in time where this realization gets to the broader public perception.
Yeah, and it's not a short-term thing. It's always midterm. You have the hype right now, and then first off, the dust needs to settle. People need to realize what actually happened and how can this now be put into real-world use cases. I mean, the companies investing all this money right now, they often still have to find their way to actually make money and not simply spend it. Then there's the whole infrastructural side, what Marten just said. And then the regulation side is always behind, of course. They're always much slower, which is natural. So we think that the time for us to start with, it's not really starting, it's to build something additional on top of what has been built over the past 8 years and already put it into real usage with real companies, even though it's on a smaller scale, puts us in a very good solution or situation actually to later on, don't know how long, but later on be able to not only say, yeah, we have this theoretical solution that can work, we will have something that is in place and is, I would say, battle-proven in terms of real-world usage.
Yeah, and there's another development. I think we have been asked this over and over in the last years. So if somebody uses blockchain and it just adds costs on top or things on top that you as an enterprise have to consider, then it's not a great thing to sell. But as soon as you can prove that you are saving costs, then it will be very interesting. And currently we are in a situation where when you are just a little bit, let's say, you don't care too much about the rest of the world and you're a small or medium enterprise using AI for whatever process inside your company, then currently you might have the feeling that it's quite cheap to use it. But it's only cheap because the big players who are in a competitive race are making like 80 to 90% loss on every prompt that one person sends to the internet. So there will be a time where these costs cannot be ignored anymore. And then any solution who sits in that part of optimizing something or automating something will be very viable because you have to save costs at a certain time to not have this explosion from, let's say, 10% of the costs now to 100% that these companies are actually profitable to 200% that they actually make a profit. So there will be huge costs explosions in the near and midterm. And this is also where a platform like our proof of execution platform can play a vital role in saving costs.
So with the new site now live, what are the main things you hope people will understand more clearly, especially newcomers who are not necessarily crypto native?
Yeah, probably the most important point is that we are not just building another blockchain or building something on a chain or doing a token launch or something. It's all about what we just mentioned, that we are building this infrastructure solution that supports so many use cases that are getting so much pressure from the regulatory side, and that we build an open ecosystem that has UBT in the middle and people can build upon it. So it's a very broad approach.
And I think it's also about making clear that it's not a startup anymore in the crypto space. I mean, the ICO is like 8 years in the past, so we are still happy that there are many veterans like we are who are with Unibright from the very beginning. But somebody who dives into that topic right now, especially from an enterprise perspective, because there's a need for a solution that we offer, it's of course interesting for that group or person that we are on the market like for years, that the token is well distributed, that it's been regulatory compliant from the very beginning, and we didn't have one single time where we have to pivot because of the token structure itself. So that's an asset for itself. But the first message and the addressing of the new website should be towards enterprise customers that need a solution, and we are here to offer it.
So now let's talk about UBT and how real-world activity translates into value. After 8 years of holding, many long-term supporters feel that business milestones with Tunesat and Audiogroup haven't yet translated into noticeable value for the token. So how do you plan to narrow that gap going forward?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that's true, and to some degree it's very logical because the platform isn't live yet, so there are no customers buying credits or using the platform. And additionally, the whole narrative, the story isn't out as well. I mean, we are talking in the Unibright community about it, doing this AMAs, having blogs out, but there's no outreach yet because we want to have some more pieces in place before we go that way. So that's logical that this hasn't translated yet because the platform hasn't started yet, or the storytelling.
From my side, at least, we have no real interest in trying to hype this thing and tell a story that is too fast or too big or too unrealistic. We are much more focused on building the platform and the structure and doing the real business and building the real economics so that tokens are getting burned. This whole thing starts to roll, and then build something that midterm and long term grows by itself based on real business success. I mean, of course, there will be a certain portion of hype, I guess, at a certain point, because there's the market that goes in cycles, and there's all of a sudden perhaps we'll have somebody looking at the token and saying this is incredible with a lot of followers, and then there's going to be stuff. But we are not the ones who will start to fuel these kind of things. We will, of course, also not say we're not going to be successful. Of course, we want to be successful. And the idea is to build a business, and UBT will long-term always have a profit or benefit from that. But we do not want to be the ones starting hypes because, we're the business side people and not the hype people.
Yeah, and with the new website and the new token model with our proof of execution platform, I guess we have for the first time a very clear relationship between protocol activity and token utility. Because with the proof generation, we have fees, we have portions that get burned, we have portions that get put into the incentive side of things to other people working in the ecosystem, for example, validators. I mean, we have a great token model. That's one of the learnings of the last 8 years, that we wanted to build an inclusive and working utility-powered ecosystem. And it's important that it's supported by the utility token and not running on fiat, because this allows us to be inclusive and to scale very fast.
Yes, and perhaps one perspective idea. I mean, the only time that Unibright actually sold a token was at the very beginning of the ICO. It was always part of the plan to distribute each and every token during that ICO, and that was in 2018. So since then, of course, our main goal has to be to provide value to the utility, because it's not like other projects. Without finger pointing, it's just a fact. It's not like other projects that only sold like 20, 30 or 40% and which of their token utility or the available tokens, because their main interest is to drive the token value itself. We have to drive the value of the protocol and of the solution we're building, because that's where the company Unibright and SPO Consulting is making money off. And with all the hypes and cycles going on, there were many times in the history of Unibright where no matter when you bought a token on the free market or in the beginning from us, you always had the chance to sell it again with a huge profit in certain times. And I think this will, if it works, this is just a thing that happens because of the utility we're building. We're not interested in like driving the price for one day, because it doesn't have anything to do with the system we're building. But the other good thing is, as soon as the system gets better and better and the incentive to buy credits earlier than later, then it automatically drives the token price as well. So there is no downside to it, the way that we do it. It's just that we do not look on the token price like on a daily basis, because we don't get anything out of it.
Yeah, and if you look back in the history of Unibright, as Stefan greatly pointed out, For example, there were times when we were big on the whole baseline community, and in EEA there was this huge community around it, and we had base ledger coming out, and we had all these use cases and customers. There was a lot of value created, and this setup is something we are working towards again. So we're perfectly set, I guess.
Are there any concrete incentives or mechanisms, for example, lockups, buybacks, structured usage tied to proof of execution, that are being considered to make UBT usage grow with the platform, and how will that support long-term holders?
Okay, yeah, so buybacks would be a very desperate thing to do. We're not planning on any artificial short-term market interventions. No, we are building a system that includes staking, so you can see staking as some kind of a lockup. We have proof fees, we have burns, real token burns in the token model, validator participation. So no, as I said, no short-term actions like buybacks, but other than that, we have a very complete token model that allows the ecosystem to evolve.
Yeah, also it's always funny. I mean, the buyback thing in a utility token, as Marten said, would be the most desperate thing to do, because if you think of a utility token as a voucher to use a service, and this voucher has a certain price at the moment where you get it, but might have a way bigger value the moment you spend it, then it would be very desperate to buy our own vouchers, because this would also be like the proof that there are no other users, because now we have the vouchers, and why should we spend them on a system that we're building? So if you really go back and thinking in terms that it's not a money-driven asset or a stable coin or anything, where these buybacks and reserves are part of the structure that a stablecoin works, UBT is a utility, and our most and best interest would be if it's widely distributed, what it is, and if there's a big incentive for enterprise players to get tokens earlier than later. These are the two parts that we can actively support and where our model is built around.
Yeah, I mean, what we will do is do some media outreach at the right moment in time when the white paper is out, and perhaps we have some more stuff to show for. Then this is something we will do, perhaps even including the community, because it's something that will help the ecosystem in general.
I think that brings us to the end of today's AMA. Thank you again to everyone who sent in questions, and to the team for walking through the proof of execution platform, the music rollout, and how all of that connects to UBT. If there are any topics that we touched on briefly or didn't get to, we'll keep them in mind for the next session, especially if we can go deeper into live client use cases and token design specifics. See you next time.